What's going on, everybody? This is Gen716 back here again, and today want to talk to you guys about the Georgia 2019 football season. Just want to recap it, and going into 2020, going to preview a little bit about what they're going to be looking like, and if they can make a national championship type of run. So let's hop straight into this thing. So obviously Georgia, they had a pretty decent year, right? It wasn't the playoffs, it wasn't the championship, it wasn't what Georgia fans had hoped for, especially with the returning players that were coming back, with what they did last year and what they were going to coming into this year, as far as losing to Texas and maybe using that as extra fuel and extra motivation. Obviously, it was this year was a little disappointing for them not going to the playoffs, but they finished off the year strong, and they got a lot more pieces coming back next year. But obviously, the biggest one was that South Carolina game. That was the biggest game. I would say that pretty much turned Georgia's season, from being potentially a national championship type of run to just I just don't know. Losing to South Carolina it just wasn't good. They lost to one of the worst teams in the SEC, and not only did they lose to them, they lost to them at home. You talk about the play of Jake Fromm and what he was able to do that game. You look at the offense and what they were able to do. The offense wasn't as efficient as it was last year. Last year they were able to throw the ball, they were able to run it. Maybe not as high level as Alabama, LSU, or Oklahoma, or Clemson, but they were pretty efficient at what they were doing. They ran the football. Jake Fromm was a great game managing type of quarterback who can make every throw you can potentially imagine. He had completed close to 70% of his throws during his sophomore year, but his junior year, it just wasn't that damn good. I mean, now again, not all of his on Fromm because the receivers couldn't get open for the most part, especially with Lawrence Cager, who was arguably Georgia's best receiver. He was hurt and out for the rest of the year. They had to rely on a freshman, George Pickens, and Matt Landers couldn't really step up. Demetrius Robertson really couldn't step up. Dominique Blaylock was that slot, but even he was hurt later on the stretch, which you can make an argument kind of cost them the season as far as the productivity in the passing game. You just didn't see that much depth for the receiving core. The offensive line was banged up. It was not as good as we saw the last couple of years, as far as protecting Jake Fromm and as far as running the football effectively. We saw DeAndre Swift. He was banged up a lot this year. They had to rely a lot on Zeus and James Cook and Brian Harrion as far as the carries late down the stretch. Offensively, we just didn't see the productivity. And you saw Cooley, who I believe was the offensive coordinator. The offensive productivity, it wasn't there for Georgia. They had to rely a lot on their defense. The defense, you can make an argument, was arguably the best defense in the country. That defense carried Georgia to a lot of wins, or at least to some of the most important wins, right? You look at the Auburn game, they had to rely on the defense. You look at the A&M game, they had to rely on the defense. The Florida game, they had to rely on the defense. Just the most important games, Georgia's defense definitely showed out, and the offense, they found opportunities to score at times, but you just knew if it wasn't for this Georgia defense, Georgia would probably have a lot more losses on their plate. So definitely a more disappointing year for the offensive side compared to the defense. Defensively, they played at a championship level, but it wasn't until they met LSU in the SEC championship game that they were banged up. Offensively, Georgia, we all know that they were banged up much more, and LSU took advantage of Georgia, and they absolutely killed them in the SEC championship game. The Georgia defense, it was just nothing they can do. As far as finishing the season strong against Baylor, that was a great win, especially because Georgia, you saw what happened to them last year. A lot of their players didn't even play in the Texas game, and what happened? They lost that game. And not only did they lose, but they get dominated. I know the score was a lot closer, but if you're a Georgia fan, Texas was just the better team that day. This game, they were a lot more. Again, I think the motivation was there. The players played. Not all of them played, but the players definitely played, and they killed Baylor. They destroyed them, and they win the Sugar Bowl. And if you look at what Kirby Smart has done with that program, right, ever since he's been there, he's won 2 New Year's Six bowl games. He's gone to a national championship. He's competed in 3 straight SEC championship games, and he's won an SEC championship. So now going into 2020, you look at the key players that are returning back for the Georgia Bulldogs. At least on the defensive side of the ball, it's going to be another monster year. They only lose 3 or 4 key players on defense, and these are starters or just rotational players. They lose 4. You look at some of the defensive players that they got. You look at guys like Adam Anderson. You look at guys like Nolan Smith, Azeez Ojulari, who was their sack leader. You look at Jermaine Johnson, not Tyler Clark, Devontae Wyatt, and Julian Rochester at the defensive tackle position. Jordan Davis at the nose. N'Kobe Dean, who was a really good rotational piece as a true freshman at the will linebacking position. Their best linebacker in Monty Rice, he's coming back. You look at Richard LeCount, Tyreek Stevenson. You look at Davad Wilson, I believe. Davad Wilson. Who else? Let me just take a look at my notes here. DJ Daniel, Tyson Campbell, Eric Stokes. How can I forget about Eric Stokes? Eric Stokes, Channing Tindall, Quay Walker. I mean, the Robert Beal. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, Georgia is going to be absolutely loaded on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, they're going to take a hit because you look at Isaiah Wilson. You look at 3 guys on their offensive line are going to be leaving. Normally, that's been the strength of them. I'm not saying I don't think it's going to be a strength, but I don't think it's going to be a weakness. Even despite all the 5-star talent, Kate Mays, he's transferring and he's going to he's at Tennessee right now. That's a big loss for their offensive line. Again, Isaiah Wilson, Andrew Thomas, Solomon Kenley, those guys are gone for offensive line. Really, only Trey Hill and I think Trey Hill and Ben Cleveland, as far as their best offensive linemen, Ben Cleveland, Trey Hill, and Jamari Slayer are their 3 best offensive linemen. That's coming back, and those guys I think Trey Hill and Jamari Slayer were the only 2 starters. I think besides that, Ben Cleveland was just more of a rotational player or a reserve player at the offensive line position. So offensive line wise, we're gonna find out. They do have George Pickens coming back, but you look at the other receivers as far as them being gone. You look at guys like a Lawrence Cager, he's going to be gone. It's just who else? Oh my God, it's escaping me. I forgot, but they do lose some receiving core depth. I will say this though, 2020 recruiting class, they're bringing in a lot of talent. You look at guys like Arian Smith. You look at guys like Jermaine Burton. Those guys are coming in there. You got the kid from St. Thomas Aquinas, Roseme. You look at Michael Roseme. He's coming in. These guys bring a lot of speed into your offense. You also bring in offensive coordinator and Todd Monken from the Cleveland Browns, who, again, I've watched Todd Monken when he was at Oklahoma State, what he was able to do there for those 3 years with that explosive offense, bringing in a type of air raid type of presence to your offense. You're talking about, again, one of the best college football coordinators in the last decade. He is now coming from the Buccaneers, he's now coming into a situation where he can fix this offense, and who knows? Who knows what this offense can look like? We saw with what happened when they brought in Joe Brady and they paired him up with Steve Ensminger. LSU's offense in a year turned into probably the most explosive offense in college football history. I'm not saying it's going to happen to the Georgia Bulldogs in 2020, but you never know. I mean, you can definitely look at line maybe this year, maybe next year, or maybe towards the future. This Georgia offense could really revolutionize itself, and we could be talking about one of the best offenses potentially in college football, especially with all that 5- and 4-star talent that they have there at the University of Georgia. Because as far as talent level, as far as talent, depth, and just the personnel that they have, easily a top 5 team in all of college football. You do lose Jake Fromm, you do lose DeAndre Swift. You also lose Brian Herrien. Again, this team is going to lose a lot of depth at the offensive side of the ball, which means that, again, year 1 with Todd Monken, that it won't be as good as what Georgia fans expect it to be. But the defense, this could be another year where the defense could carry the offense, and Georgia could still win a whole bunch of games. They could still go to the SEC championship game. They could potentially still compete for a championship. They could still potentially compete for it. You just never know. Jamie Newman coming from Wake Forest. I know a lot of Georgia fans were excited for him. Again, I don't think he fits Todd Monken's offense, but he's a good quarterback. You just never know. I never thought that Joe Burrow was going to have the transition he had from last year this year, but it happened. So you never know. But Jamie Newman, he brings that playmaking type ability. He can run. He can run the football. He can throw it on the run. Maybe not as accurate in the pocket as Jake Fromm, but for the most part, a pretty efficient quarterback that's coming in. And who knows? Maybe he can take Georgia to that next level on the offensive side of the ball either this year or potentially next year. Overall, though, Georgia, they're going to look strong. Their schedule is not as tough. They only play they are on the road week 3 or week 4 against Alabama. They do play Auburn, they do play A&M, but they don't play LSU in the regular season. Their schedule is not that strong. They start off with Virginia, I think Virginia's going to have a down year. We could be talking about a Georgia team that once again competes for an SEC championship and a potential playoff bid. It's a possibility. It's a possibility that they go into the potentially undefeated and playing against Bama, LSU, or whoever, and they can still lose the game and still get in. I mean, it could be that year for Georgia. I mean, Georgia is going to be absolutely loaded as far as their overall depth. Defensively, again, it's going to be as strong as ever. I think it will probably be the best defense in the country with all the returning talent that they have. But offensively, that's the question mark. Could Todd Monken and Jamie Newman turn that offensive round? That's something that we're going to have to find out. But anyway, guys, that's all I got for you guys today for this Georgia football 2019 season recap. 2020 looks to be strong. We'll find out what they're going to do. We'll find out if they can make that run. So anyway, guys, if you guys liked the video, please hit the like button, share the video, subscribe. Really helps out the channel a lot. Make sure to hit those notifications to catch every video of mine. I'm sorry. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for you guys today. Have a good day. This is Jan716. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.